How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we'll make some black stout bread. Now, rye bread is one of my favorite breads ever. It's one of the first breads I've ever baked, and I grew up eating bread like this. And this one is special because instead of water, we are using dark stout, in this case Guinness. But if you can't have alcohol, you can use water. In fact, there are many things you can customize in this recipe. But let's get on with this one. As ever, you'll find full written details in the link down in the description box. So first things first, let's see what equipment we need. And it's very little. We need a bowl, scales, temperature probe, a spatula, and a loaf tin. I would advise lining your tin with some paper, just to prevent any stickage. Although the bread shouldn't stick, it's better to be safe than sorry. And equipment wise, that's about it. Let's look at the ingredients. Got some rye flour, white flour, yeast, salt, black treacle, cocoa powder, some oil, fennel seeds, toasted walnuts, then some toasted sunflower, pumpkin and linseeds, and your dark stout of choice. Now before we start, I know my kitchen is around 21 degrees Celsius, so I want to warm up my beer to around 30 to 31 degrees. This may seem quite warm for a liquid when making bread, but we're not kneading this dough. So the temperature of the dough will not rise any further after mixing it up initially. Now grab a large bowl, add your stout, the yeast, salt, the oil, and all the other ingredients except the flour. Now rye bread is as simple as it gets. I think some people will get put off by it because they look at it and I think it's quite intimidating to make, but that could not be further from the truth. It is the easiest bread to make of all. It's important to mix all the ingredients well before adding the flour. This will ensure that everything's distributed evenly. And before you add the rye flour, add the white flour and also give it a good mix. Because as soon as you add rye flour, this will turn to a sticky glue. And that's why you want everything mixed well before you add it. And that's the last ingredient, simple as that. Now continue mixing the dough until you don't see any more dry flour. Give it a minute or so. Make sure you get all the flour mixed up properly. You don't want any dry lumps of flour in the middle of the dough. And that's been it. Now we're ready for the final fermentation. Take your loaf tin and scrape all your dough into it. Try to spread it out nice and evenly, because you want to fill all the gaps. One thing you can do is lift up the tin and smack it from the bottom with your hand. This will help the dough fall down into the corners. And you may think, how is this sticky mass going to result in a beautiful bread? But given enough fermentation time, it will puff up nicely, and that's exactly what you will get. Now we want to smooth out the surface of this dough, so you can wet your hand and just spread it around. And to make it extra smooth, you can grab your spatula and just even everything out nicely. Although there's nothing wrong with a rough surface. And that's all the work done. The rest is just waiting time. One thing you need to do is take the temperature. 26 degrees Celsius is just about right for this. If your dough is cooler, it may take longer to ferment. If it's warmer, it may take less time. But 3.5 to 4 hours should be okay for this. And you will clearly see when it's ready for baking. This is around 3 hours in. It's not puffed up massively, so it needs a little bit longer. But during the final hour of fermentation, you want to preheat your oven. 160 degrees Celsius with a fan on. Now if you have a baking stone or a thick bottom tray, place it in the oven to warm up as well. This is a great base for baking on. And look at how it's rising now, it's really bubbling up. And once your loaf has loads of little holes on the surface, you know it's ready, it's full of air. An optional thing you can do before baking is mix 1 teaspoon of treacle with 1 teaspoon of water and just brush it on the surface to make it extra dark and rich. This bread will take quite some time to bake, and if it's getting dark quickly, then cover it with some tin foil. We'll bake it in a bread tin for 1 hour, and unlike most breads, this is not the kind of bread that's going to rise massively. It's already risen. This is meant to be nice and dense. So after the first hour of baking, take it out of the tin, remove the paper, and we'll pop it back in the oven for another 30 minutes or so. And if you don't have one of these cast iron skillets or a tray, simply bake it on a rack in the oven. So another 30 minutes should do the job. Because a bread like this is quite dense, there's one sure way of checking if it's baked properly or not. Stick your thermometer right in the middle. If it reads higher than 94 degrees Celsius, which is 200 Fahrenheit, it's ready. And if not, then pop it back in the oven. Well, this one's just about right. As a little bonus, when it comes out the oven, what you can do is take a brush and brush it with some oil. This will make it really nice and shiny. You don't have to do it, but I quite like it. One thing that's very important, you must leave this bread to cool down completely. I left it for a good 10 hours overnight. There's still stuff going on inside, so it's not ready as soon as it comes out of the oven. But that's your dark stout bread. Quite cool, right? Make sure you slice it nice and thin and enjoy it with your favorite toppings. And don't forget to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.